All right, so this week we're going to talk about digital citizenship. And it's going to be something that teachers are kind of expected to reach, whether you're elementary or secondary, because I would assume that this would be similar to like the core democratic principles and being a good citizen in general, really translates with this part of it. So we usually like to cover these 8 different areas. Common sense, media has done a really great job of teaching or creating resources for digital citizenship. So you don't have to create things from scratch. There are things that currently exist. And this is how they identify all the different kind of 8 areas that your students need to be prepared in as a digital citizen. Within their own curriculum, this is kind of where they cover those particular tasks. So they have different units, and they make sure that in every grade level that they're covering each one, except for obviously with K through 2, they're not really covering self-image and identity yet, because most children at that age don't have that strong of a digital presence or kind of experimenting with themselves. That's not developmentally appropriate. So this week what we're going to do, just in the class prep, we're going to go over the 8 issues really quickly, and what you're going to think about is, how can I teach these issues more in depth? Or what am I interested in? Or how does this apply to my particular area? We have Nearpod examples that have the Common Sense curriculum built into them. So we can look at a few of those during class next week. And then your tip number 13 is you're actually going to design an infographic on one of those 8 particular issues. So we want you in your class prep to kind of start exploring one of these issues and what are the different resources within those. So let's talk about the first one, which is internet safety. At the middle school or high school level, one of the things that you really want to try and avoid is any kind of fear-based mechanisms or teaching types of strategies, because teenagers really don't respond to fear-based. It's just a developmental thing. They're trying to break away from adults, and so anything that you tell them that's bad, just like smoking, drugs, everything else like that, they're less likely to believe you. So instead, maybe talk about like what kind of conversations can be risky, and just say, these are some questions that they could ask themselves to try and kind of identify whether or not they're really being safe online or not. And teens, not children, are usually the most likely to receive online sexual solicitations. Online solicitors rarely target younger kids. This usually happens more to like 14 to 17. So they may ask teens to talk about sex or give out personal sexual information or send sexy photos online or even meet offline. So teens really need to kind of understand the predator. The predator versus prey actually gives a wrong impression. There's a range of different behaviors that aren't made clear. So these behaviors can range from not as risky, where they receive inappropriate spam through email and they immediately send it to junk mail, or very risky, where they seek companionship or friendship in an online chat room, and they develop an online risky relationship with a stranger. So just trying to help your students with that. The research also shows that teens who flirt and engage in online sexual talk with strangers, especially in chat rooms, are more likely to be solicited for sex as well. So these are just things to kind of let your students know about, and that this can happen, and just encourage them to engage in good internet safety. For elementary kids, it's okay to really talk about a gut feeling. Like, is it an uncomfortable situation? You can use a traffic light analogy here, where you say, do you think that this is green okay, yellow or iffy, or red is risky? To help kids kind of assess the different online scenarios. Like, for example, if someone asks them for a photo, or talks about inappropriate things, or asks them to keep a secret, or bothers them, or says something that makes them feel sad or upset. You may be tempted to lean on the typical stranger danger messaging here, but do consider that these situations may also happen with people kids now know or sort of know. And emphasize to the students that they have the power to end conversations and log off the internet at any time. And they shouldn't let any shyness or embarrassment prevent them to talking to a parent or a family member if they get into an iffy, a yellow, or a risky, red situation. This approach can apply beyond grooming to issues like cyberbullying and online scams too. So those are some different strategies that you can use for internet safety. And I've included a couple of videos here that you can kind of check out. There are safety tips for kids, or even protecting your privacy online, to kind of show these videos to your students so that it might be another voice besides yours coming through. The next issue is privacy and security. And just like in real life, it's important for young people to know who they can trust with their information online. There's security programs and privacy settings, of course, that can help block some of these issues, like computer viruses and cookies. But kids should also learn how to create strong passwords, protect their private information, and even starting in elementary school, kids can learn the importance of looking at a website's privacy policy with their families and asking permission before they create accounts. Now, older teens can learn concrete strategies for identifying scams, as well as limit the types of information that companies can collect about them through apps and websites. So they can actually go in through Facebook and other sorts of places and say, yes, you can do this, no, you can't do that. So you can talk about the do's and don'ts of creating strong passwords, like don't include any private information, make sure that passwords are 8 or more characters, and combining using letters, numbers, and symbols, changing their password at least every 6 months, and not sharing their passwords with their friends, even if they trust them. Kids don't really understand they're putting their information in jeopardy because the warning signs aren't always obvious. So it's important for you to kind of educate them on that. The next one is relationships and communication. And so this particular issue is whether we're reading an online review or posting something on a social networking site, texting a friend, or sharing a photo through an app, what we're really doing is we're still participating in a world where we're all instantly connected to thousands of people at a moment's notice. It's still a community, it's still a society, and there are certain things that we have to understand about that. Like when kids connect with each other from a distance or through a screen name, it can affect the way they behave. For example, their actions can sometimes feel removed from consequences or free from discovery. And when people are anonymous, as we all know, it's easier to behave irresponsibly, cruelly, or unethically. Sometimes people may interpret the tone or misinterpret the tone in the context of a particular message or post. So kids need a code of conduct for using the internet. What's appropriate, what's inappropriate, and what does it take to really truly be a good citizen. So keep this in mind in thinking about how you can guide your students to think critically about different forms and norms of digital communication, thinking about who's their audience, what's the purpose of the message, and in what context will people be reading this. Cyberbullying and digital drama. This is one that is fairly well publicized. I'm going to share this quick video here with you to tell you what cyberbullying is.
The essential question of our day is, when does inappropriate online behavior cross the line to cyberbullying, and what can you do about it? My name's Amy Withers, and I teach at Amistad Dual Language School in Manhattan. So sometimes we do joke with each other, and that's fine. Today's lesson is about cyberbullying, and it focuses on when maybe teasing online crosses the line to become something more serious. These are different forms of cyberbullying, right? That all the things you're talking about. So harassing. Does anybody know what harassing might mean?
It's like pressuring you to do something.
It could mean that, yeah. It just means when you're repeating something like pressure or negative message over and over, and you're using digital media. Today we focus really on looking at what are the different forms of cyberbullying. In the lesson, there are a lot of different interactions going on with the students. They are talking about something with the whole class and sharing ideas, and then they go into smaller groups, grapple over things that they might not all agree on, so they have to focus on backing up their opinions with evidence, and then in the end they have to take a highlight of what they discussed and then share that out with the rest of the class. First, we're going to watch a video of a teenager who was involved in a cyberbullying episode.
Her friend saw me comment her boyfriend. She thought something was going on, so she got mad. And then her friend started like harassing me on MySpace. I remember telling my mom, and my mom was mad. She was like, you should call the school, you should do this, you should do that. It's like, I would just make it worse.
Okay, we're going to talk a little bit about the video.
Okay.
Stacey's mom.
So you can see how a teacher might engage in this kind of discussion or talk, and basically what she had posted up there, it's using online or mobile technology to harass, embarrass, or bully others. And it can do a lot of lasting harm to the point where we've seen many students actually commit suicide because of the cyberbullying that they're experiencing, as well as regular bullying in class as well. So let's talk next about the fifth issue, which is digital footprint and reputation. And we talked a little bit about this the previous week, talking about your own digital footprint as a teacher and reputation. But really, what it's important to know about with your students is having your students learn to protect their own privacy and respect each other's privacy. Knowing that our digital world is permanent, and with each post, their students are basically building a digital footprint or their digital identity online. And by encouraging your students to self-reflect before they self-reveal whatever they post online, they can consider how what they share online can impact themselves as well as others. So it's really important to get them to have an awareness about their digital footprint, because this will help support their digital literacy and just their understanding in general. So helping your students become aware of that digital footprint, and then also celebrating the culture of sharing through digital media, while considering some possible harmful effects of oversharing and internet privacy, and then learning to respect the privacy of others online when you're tagging or posting or copying someone else's personal information. So just basically helping your students understand the public and permanent nature of the internet so that they can begin to build a positive online presence. All right, the next one is self-image and identity. And again, depending on what age your students are at, they can start really experimenting with their own image and identity. So people have talked about, students going through different goth type of experiences, or trying to experiment to figure out maybe what their sexual orientation might be, or things along those lines. And so students are also trying on identities online as well. And because it can be sometimes a way to be anonymous, sometimes they'll push limits and act in ways they normally wouldn't act in the real world. So it's really important for them to understand the similarities and differences in how they present themselves online and offline, as well as reflect on how the internet allows for anonymity and deception, and explore how this can affect their own online behavior. And then finally, consider the motivations and benefits or possible harm to oneself and others when assuming an online identity that's different from one's real self. So you can do some different things, like even working with students' families to help communicate to them why certain identities are grounded in hatred or violence, or illegal activities, or even risky sexual behavior that should be avoided entirely. And so this can help students to learn how to habitually reflect on how they can present themselves in online in beneficial ways. Information literacy. So the big part about this is online information is not always accurate, and having students to make sure that they're learning effective techniques for evaluating the quality and credibility of websites, as well as thinking critically about the intentions of commercial websites and advertising. So we're bombarded with advertisements all the time. What are the different messages that people are trying to get across, and what's the real information that's lying underneath that? As well as applying different search strategies to increase the accuracy and relevancy of their online searches so they actually get at what they want to get at. One of the great ways that you can also look at just whether information is correct or not, there's factcheck.org that did a fantastic job during the debates to actually check on what people were saying. And here are some different tips here for Boolean searches. So making sure that you can use the and, or, in order to do exact phrases or you can do quotation marks for mashed potatoes or garlic butter. And using it's located usually right above your return key, wherever I think that's the / or the backslash is right. If you would hit shift, you can so you'll search for both of those terms. You can search for a particular type. So if you want to search for a PDF or a Word document or a JPEG, then you can do those two by putting JPEG and then putting the colon after it. Define before any word gets a definition. You can use the search bar as a calculator, so you can actually type that into the top and it can put type it in for you. Using around will allow a word to appear within a certain number of words. So Hamlet, around 3 checklists, so that'll do it. And then also remember that the case doesn't matter in your search. So these are just kind of tips and tricks. And so if you look for Boolean search tips and tricks, and you can even find more in here to make yourself and your students better searchers. The last one is creative credit and copyright. And since we live in a digital culture that empowers young people to access information instantly and rework media easily and share their creations globally, but what it often finds is that they can sometimes leads them to use online material without thinking about where it comes from or to whom it belongs. So really thinking about viewing the internet as a free-for-all can lead to problems of copyright infringement like plagiarism, piracy, and a general lack of respect for the hard work and creativity of others. So think about like even if something is posted on the internet for everyone to see, someone somewhere created that picture, song, or article, and it belongs to that person. They need to have be cited for that particular work. So this particular issue would focus on helping your students learn about their rights to their own copyrighted work, identify how they can use copyrighted work without permission through public domain and fair use, and understand that piracy and plagiarism are forms of copyright that are unethical and unlawful. So these are the different issues, and what we want you to think about is what issue do you want to focus on for your infographic that is going to best meet the needs for your students' grade level and subject area. So for example, secondary English language arts, since there's a lot on plagiarism for you, maybe you want to look at the 8th issue, which was the copyright issue. Maybe for younger students, if you're doing early childhood education, maybe internet safety or even searching techniques might be something that you want to focus on. So think about which one of those issues do you want to focus on. I'll go back to them so you can pause it at this one if you want to. And which one would you like to focus on and why?